Welcome to Workforce Reimagined, a podcast on the future of work. I'm your host, and today we will be exploring a hot topic, Canadian employers and the rise of self-taught skills. Our guest is Samantha Timbers, a corporate trainer and speaker on workplace stress, communications, and change management. Samantha helps leaders and teams stay clear, calm, and effective, skills that will be crucial today. Samantha, thanks for joining us today. We've been seeing stories about young Canadians learning everything from coding to design on YouTube or TikTok. Many are saying they'd rather see those skills on resumes than on old degrees. But talent shows employers are skeptical. Samantha, what do you make of this trend?
Well, Al, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm excited to talk about this. So it's true, through the pandemic and everything that was allowed to be online, it really turbocharged informal learning. People built skills through online courses, through tutorials. I've developed skills and tutorials for people to learn online. And people really went to that during the pandemic when there wasn't a lot to do. They really went online to learn. And it's great for individuals. It reduces stress by empowering self-directed growth. Not everything needs to be taught into a classroom. But leaders, it's a change management challenge. So let's unpack this out.
Over the last year, resume analysis and surveys have confirmed the trend. An Express Employment Professionals Harris poll found 52% of Canadian job seekers and 51% of hiring managers believe skills from informal platforms are credible. And 31% Canadians now list those self-taught skills on resumes. It's especially true for the Gen Z. 60% of the 18 to 24-year-olds say they've self-trained in a new skill. However, a big gap remains in employment acceptance. In that survey, 61% of hiring managers still prefer candidates with formal education. 11% favor self-taught experience outright. This means that 3/4 of the hiring managers either prefer degrees or require proof of skills. Canadian managers are most convinced by references and industry knowledge that a candidate can truly has those self-taught skills. Work examples and detailed explanations also boost confidence. In other words, employers are increasingly saying, show me that you can do the work. Those are telling numbers. Even though half the managers admit online skills can be credible, very few have overhauled their hiring. In fact, only 23% have updated the processes to verify self-taught skills, and 36% have no plans to change anything. So the main message here is self-learning surging, but many recruiters haven't caught up? Samantha, in your experience, why do you think there's a hesitation here?
Well, Al, there's a couple of things. First of all, people do not like to change. The one thing that people actually hate is to change. And the reasons why people don't want to change in this aspect is risk aversion. Hiring has high stakes. Al, I don't know if you've hired people before. I think you have. I've hired many people before. And I'm telling you, you make that wrong hiring decision, that person can live in your life for a very long time. And you're going to be with that person 7-8 hours a day, or they're going to be with your company 7-8 hours a day. And if you make the wrong hiring decision, it's very stressful for managers. So traditionally, degrees and certifications served as a signal of competence. So I don't always agree with that because you can go through university, as I mentioned before, and you can get 50% and still get that same diploma as someone that got 95%. Not many people are asking you for your transcript. So without the degree and without the certification, managers are a little bit worried about, how do I know they're legitimate? How do I know if I don't have that piece of paper? Because that's the way we've always done things. And this ties to stress. Leaders feel pressure to make the right hire, as I mentioned. To make the wrong hire, thousands of dollars it costs, especially in a tight labor market. So it's safer for some to stick with the familiar criteria. If they have to change, that means that they have to get a new system. And many of them lack systems. So most HR tools and test formal education. We haven't fully built the pipelines to access informal learning yet. But that's really changing because people are understanding that people can get skills and abilities from YouTube, from online, and they can demonstrate those skills.
Okay, let's talk about stress and change. Samantha, you help teams navigate change. How does the shift to skill-based hiring affect the workplace stress?
Well, changing your hiring has a ripple effect on your employees' morale and their stress. So let's say that you have somebody that you hired, they had to have a university degree when you hired them. And now, 5 years later, they've been working there for 5 years, and now you're changing your hiring, and they notice job postings come out and they don't require this university degree anymore. That's going to start affecting those people that had to go to school to get hired with your company. Because a lot of companies will look towards their alumni, towards their schools to hire people from. So that affects their morale and their stress. When companies decide that their staff and their company needs learning, if they don't deliver it properly, this way of telling them they need to learn more skills, if they just say, we need you to learn more new tools and new platforms, and you need this and you need that, and starting pushing training on your staff, they actually get anxious and they get a bit behind. They may even disconnect and become disengaged. This may lead to burnout, because what someone hears when you tell them they need training, they hear, I'm not good enough. I don't perform right. Now you're hiring all these people with these new skills and I don't have them, so I may lose my job. And today in this labor market, people are terrified of losing their jobs. People already can't afford to do what they need to do without losing their job on top of it. So the key here, how to reduce stress when you're thinking about doing some training, have a conversation with the staff and say, there is this gap. We're willing to look at filling this gap, and we're going to get the right trainer for the right items and for the right training. And then you acknowledge that training takes time. People that do this 2-day training and their staff get really, really, really excited for about 2 weeks. And I've seen it so many years. People get this 2-day training, they're excited for 2 weeks, and guess what happens after the 2 weeks out? You're nodding. They go back to the way that they were. So change has to be incremental, and it has to be small shifts. And I will talk here a little bit about change and how people don't like change. So New Year's resolutions, Sal. New Year's resolutions.
That makes sense, but there's also the issue of validating these self-taught skills. How should leaders or employers adapt hiring communications for this new reality?
Well, they have to be transparent. So when they're putting out a job posting, if the company values non-traditional credentials, tell the candidates that explicitly. For instance, we're open to proven skills even without a degree. Put that on your job posting and let people understand that they need to show their evidence of their skills that they have developed from online, from YouTube, from wherever. They still need to demonstrate them. And managers can say, I see that you learned whatever they learned online. Can you show me an example of how you used this? This transparency signals trust. It also reduces stress, and candidates know they won't be penalized for not having a degree.
Speaking of evidence, many experts now recommend a skill-first approach. What tips do you have for candidates who are self-taught?
Well, I would say anybody that's self-taught has to document. I have been self-taught for the past 5 years, and I have forgotten to document everything because I own my own business. But if you are looking at using those skills in employment, you need to build a portfolio. You need to demonstrate and pretend even that it's on-the-job training that you're receiving this training for, because you need to show them. Employers want people who can demonstrate what they've learned. So keep all of those. Document, even if you learn it on YouTube, document where you learned it, who you learned it from. And there are there's managers who also want, hiring managers who also want references. And I would say references is one of the biggest things for people, because they can speak to your knowledge, your work. So make sure that you reach out to your references. Make sure you build those references and let people know what you do. so that they can give you that reference. And don't just stick with one reference, a friend reference. Get these professional references and have a plethora of them that can that can say that you've demonstrated your skills in the past.
That's great advice. Now let's look at the big picture. What policies or training initiatives could help bridge any gap?
Well, we need to up-level the efforts. So governments can continue funding micro-credential programs, which they are, and awareness campaigns. In fact, several provinces have already started with this initiative. Ontario has put in $60 million into micro-credentials, and BC invested millions in targeted skills courses. So federal programs could similarly endorse skill-based certification. On the corporate side, I'd recommend establishing internal skills passports. So as your staff go through these different training initiatives, they can build a passport for that. And they can have that over a number of years. Because if they just have this training every now and again, or this training that someone was here 5 years ago and then someone is not here, they're not going to be sure. So they could have a skills passport and a database of the employees' proven skills.
That's excellent, Samantha. But before we move on, let's just do a quick recap of insights from your perspective.
All right. Well, first, Al, self-taught skills are here to stay because they just are. And people have access to learning now. People have access to information. Second, validation is the key. Employers want evidence. So we must learn how to provide that evidence through portfolio, through demos, and making sure that we document, as I mentioned. Third, communication is essential. Leaders must clearly explain what skills matter and support their teams in learning them. And finally, on the system side, we need updating hiring processes and policies to formally recognize these new credentials because people are learning this information in different ways.
Let's look now at how some Canadian employers are responding. For example, a few tech startup firms in Toronto have begun hiring purely on skills. They give candidates coding challenges during the interview and emphasize Grid Hub portfolios over degrees. One fintech firm, we'll call tech company reported such a success after ditching the degree requirements entirely for its database analytic roles. They widened their candidate pool then, and they saw faster hiring and a better fit. They even mentor junior hires with boot camp backgrounds, which boosts diversity. In contrast, many traditional industries like banking or manufacturing, they've been slower. They worry about consistency and regulatory compliance. For instance, a national bank might list an undergraduate degree on postings out of habit, believing it signals a baseline of training. Some employers frankly say they worry that people could lie about their self-learning. This brings us to some common pushbacks. How do I know they truly believe that skill? Degrees ensure a certain amount of rigor. Those criticisms, they're real. It's why 61% of managers stick to degrees. Employers often operate on inertia. They hire from alumni networks, they use old job descriptions, and they test the credentials. They'll argue that updating processes to include skill tests or portfolio reviews takes time and resources that many companies simply don't have. While these concerns are valid, experts warn that ignoring the trend is risky. As technology evolves, relying solely on traditional credentials can starve a firm of talent. The skill gap is very real. Nearly half of Canadian small, medium-sized businesses report difficulty in finding skilled workers. And youth unemployment remains high, 14% amongst the 15 to 24-year-olds, partly because young people have skills that they're simply not acknowledged. The result is both being untapped and companies stressed by these shortages. Any thoughts on these tensions, Samantha?
Yeah, the tensions are understandable, but they're solvable. First, as you mentioned, youth unemployment, 14%. That's double what it is for people over 24. Therefore, companies have to start, and they can start small. They need to start looking at this untapped labor market because they keep saying they can't hire people with the skills. Maybe they need to get them on board and get the skills on the job. So they could do a pilot where one team hires skills first. They can monitor that performance and share success stories. For example, a pilot for a hiring event that could accept applications of people with portfolios to show that they have the real results, that they have the real skills. And over time, positive outcomes can convert skeptics. Also, developing a standard skills assessment, even for simple tasks, can provide objectivity. This reduces bias and actually makes hiring more fair. By expanding the talent pool, businesses might even reduce hiring time costs, and some studies suggest for skill-based hiring, it's their competitive edge if they start using other ways to hiring people.
Maybe we could just give some practical takeaways as we wrap this up, Samantha, for both leaders or employers and job seekers or employees.
Yes, well, we need to look at updating hiring practices. Things have changed. Things are changing rapidly now than they used to. People used to have the same hiring practices for years and years and years. Now we need to wake up and smell the coffee, Al. We need to start changing the hiring practices, including skills assessment or ask for portfolios in job postings. Explicitly welcome non-traditional credentials. Invest in upskilling. Offer formal training programs, micro-credential incentives, or even paid time for courses. As one study notes, employees are more motivated when they see commitment from their employer. I will add, Al, I heard of this program recently that a very large employer has told their employees they can take 2 hours every single week and money that they're providing for them to take any course they want. They can learn another language, they can learn pottery, and these employers are really the ones that are up and coming because they're seeing learning as it doesn't have to always be job related because it actually motivates people to learn. If they're not motivated to learn on the job, then they can learn what they want to, and this actually maps across, and it will increase their enthusiasm for on-the-job training. And this employer has tapped that, which is amazing. And one more thing. Communicate clearly. Many employers do not communicate clearly. They do not communicate. And they need to explain why these new skills matter and that the employees can gain them and they can help them gain them. And they don't need to express it that they are not worthy or that they're not smart enough. They need upskilling. And if they've been working for years, they haven't had time to upskill. So they can give them that upskilling. And for critical roles, consider offering interview prep material. More and more employers are doing this. They're saying, these are the questions we're going to ask you. You have time to formulate that and you can demonstrate your skills, which is really important. And be inclusive. Recognize that not everyone needs to go to university. Not everyone needs a degree. Recognize portfolios, volunteer experience, non-degree programs, and use structured interviews or blind skills tests to reduce unconscious bias. And hire based on concrete evidence. As one HR expert said, you're looking for evidence that the individual can do the job. That's really it. You want to hire people that can do the job. So for job seekers and for candidates, I would say, again, document your learning. You need to document it so you can show proof. If you've been learning for the past 5 years, document it. Go in and find out. Keep a polished portfolio of your projects, not just a resume. Even simple concepts show that you can apply what you learned. Get micro-credentials. There's a lot of things like LinkedIn Learning that will give you, or even Udemy Learning that will give you a badge for learning, and then you have some proof that you did that and you can show that you know how to do it. Network and reference, so connect with mentors, classmates, for online learning peers who can vouch for your skills. Someone who says they're really good at this, I've seen them do this, is amazing if someone else can speak for you. Frame your story. In applications and interviews, explain exactly how you used your self-taught skills.
Stories are great. Absolutely. I think most interviewers are sitting there saying, can you do that for me? And if you did it for somebody else, can you do that for me? Or can you do something else for me because you've shown that you can do something and produce? So that's great. Any final thoughts, Samantha, before we wrap up?
Yes, the workplace is evolving fast. Embracing new ways of recognizing talents can make us all more resilient. It can make you really be that leader who is taking on candidates and trusting, yes, people can lie about their skills, people can lie about a whole bunch of things. Ask them to demonstrate it. And for leaders, flexibility and empathy are key. Support your people through change. It's not one and done. It's not like, let's get you into this one day training and now you're all changed. Change takes time. So for workers, lifelong learning is both your toolkit and your opportunity. So don't just sit there for years at a company and not learn anything new. That is not going to be helpful at all. When organizations and employees collaborate in this shift, we build stronger, more adaptive economy, and we reduce stress for everybody.
Thank you, Samantha, for your insights and your wisdom. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. You're finding new ways to learn, new perspectives, and reconsidering hiring practices at work. We hope today's discussion will give you some more ideas. This was Workforce Reimagined. For sources and more information, please check our episode notes. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning, both as a leader and a learner.